Okay, Trig students, last year in Algebra 2 we talked to you about the inverse, how to find an inverse function. That's what section 3.8 is all about. We really need to just switch x and y, and technically you are really finished. You have found the inverse. And that is especially true with coordinates. When it says find the inverse of 6, 2 and 2, negative 3, I expect you to write down 2, 6 and negative 3, 2. That's what I expect for the inverse. I do not expect you to do something fancy with the coordinates and multiply them by negative 1, which is what a lot of children do. So don't be that kid that's ignoring me and just multiplying everything by negative 1 because they feel like that's the thing to do. All you have to do to find an inverse is switch x and y. Now, if we're dealing with a function or an equation like y equals x squared, math teachers will ask you to do one step further. We will ask you to not only switch x and y, we will ask you to solve that for y, which in some cases is extremely easy, and in other cases will test your algebra skills because you have forgotten some things, probably because you go too close to magnets or something like that. So yeah, take the square root of both sides and we end up with y is equal to plus and minus. Don't forget the plus and the minus, right? The square root of x. So you get two parts, the positive square root of x and the negative square root of x. Now, I'd like you to direct your attention to the book on page 209. Okay, top of the page is the blue graph. I know that's that music that you hear a lot of times in Kentucky. Is the blue graph, y equals x squared, a function? And you need to justify. I'm sorry, that doesn't need to be a question because I'm telling you, justify. Okay? Is the second question, is the orange graph a function? Yes, you'll need to justify your answer on that one as well. Third question. What is the relationship between the different graphs? The blue one, the orange one. Do you see the connection? Please describe it to me. And don't tell me they're inverses of each other. I want you to talk about the graphs. They drew a line in there between those so that it will help you understand the connection. We talked about it last year. It should be something that jumps out at you off the page. Question 4. How does the horizontal line test on the blue graph, which is the original function, answer the function question about the orange graph? That's the inverse function. So in other words, I might ask you, is the orange one a function? And I want you to think about how does the horizontal line test on the blue one answer the function question about the orange one? Think about that. Okay, next. Find the inverse of this. I am pretty sure every one of you can switch x and y. The big challenge I have for you in your notes right now is to use your algebraic skills to then solve it for y. Many of you will have forgotten how to cross multiply or how to use your properties of proportions. But if you do know how to use your properties of proportions, or you do know how to cross multiply, you'll probably be able to solve for y. So use those skills that you've been taught ever since middle school. Okay, then answer this question. Is the inverse of y equals 1 over the quantity x minus 3 plus 2 a function? Justify. Next thing I want you to figure out from your textbook, from online sources, if two equations f of x and g of x are inverses of each other, then I want to know this. What is the composition f of g of x? What does that equal? And what does g of f of x equal? And no, you do not need to know what f of x and g of x are to answer this question because the definition is the same no matter what the functions are. Okay? Assuming that f of x and g of x are inverses of each other. Okay? Last thing you need to do in your notes. Using composition of functions, I want you to prove f of x equals 2x plus 5 and g of x equals 1 half x minus 5 are or are not inverses of each other. You need to prove that, and you need to use the composition of functions, the definition you just wrote about, in your notes. These are the things you need to be doing for me tonight. Fill in the rest of what I didn't fill in the notes, and we'll talk about it tomorrow in class, but you need to answer these questions before I do, so that I know that you are participating. So, figure out these things as much as you can. Some of these are easy definitions, some of them are involve a little bit of algebra, and some of them ask you to think a little bit. So we'll talk more about this tomorrow.